Guilty. The word, sharp and final, sliced through the tense courtroom silence, aimed directly at the slumped figure of Sarah Washington. Kevin, a small 12-year-old in a worn suit, felt it like a punch to the gut. The fluorescent lights hummed, casting a sterile glow on the polished wood of the judge's bench. Judge Carter, an imposing man confined to a wheelchair for 8 years, stared down with an unreadable expression. Whispers, a mixture of pity and resignation, rippled through the gallery. Kevin's mother, Sarah, a janitor with calloused hands and tired eyes, looked up, her hope visibly draining away. The accusation, theft of $50,000 from the courthouse safe. The consequence, a prison sentence that would shatter their already fragile world. Judge Carter cleared his throat, adjusting his spectacles. Given the irrefutable evidence, the court finds Sarah Washington guilty as charged. A murmur of agreement from some of the gallery, a few nods from court staff. Judge Carter's assistant, a smarmy man named Mark, gave Sarah a look of smug satisfaction. The crowd, a mix of curious onlookers and courthouse regulars, seemed to collectively sigh. The outcome a foregone conclusion. Kevin's jaw tightened. He watched his mother's shoulders sag, her gaze meeting his with an apology he couldn't bear. But instead of tears, a spark ignited in his eyes, a silent, unwavering resolve. He took a deep, steadying breath. As the bailiff began to lead his mother away, Kevin's voice, surprisingly clear and calm, cut through the noise. "Stop!" Judge Carter, momentarily startled, raised an eyebrow. "Is there something you wish to add, young man?" he asked, a hint of patronizing amusement in his tone. Mark snickered softly from beside the judge. Kevin stepped forward, his small frame radiating a quiet defiance. "This isn't over. My mother is innocent." Judge Carter leaned forward, a sardonic smile playing on his lips. "Innocence, boy, is determined by evidence, not by a child's wishful thinking. Your mother has been found guilty. It's a harsh truth, but truth nonetheless." The crowd shifted, some murmuring about the boy's misplaced loyalty. Mark leaned in, whispering something to the judge, who chuckled. Kevin's gaze locked onto Judge Carter's wheelchair. He spoke, his voice low but piercing, every word carrying an unexpected weight. "Let my mother go, Judge Carter, and I promise you, I'll make you walk again." A wave of stunned silence, then a burst of incredulous laughter erupted in the courtroom. Mark guffawed, clapping his hand over his mouth. Judge Carter's smile vanished, replaced by a flicker of annoyance and something else. Something that looked like fear. No one in that room understood the true weight of Kevin's words, or the months he had spent preparing for this exact moment. The courtroom was in an uproar, but Kevin stood unfazed, his eyes still fixed on Judge Carter, who now looked less amused and more disturbed. The judge's gavel slammed, a sharp crack against the rising din. "Order, order in this court!" But the laughter and murmurs continued, focused entirely on the audacious boy. Some spectators openly scoffed, others shook their heads in disbelief at the child's outburst. Mark, however, had stopped laughing. A subtle shift in his posture, a tightness around his eyes, suggested a deeper unease. A woman in a sharp business suit, civil rights attorney Patricia Williams, rose from the back of the gallery. Her expression was thoughtful, a hint of curiosity replacing her initial skepticism. She hadn't laughed. Instead, she had watched Kevin with an intensity that few others possessed. Judge Carter finally found his voice, a forced sternness replacing his earlier sarcasm. "Young man, that is quite a claim. Are you suggesting divine intervention? A miracle cure?" He gestured to his wheelchair. "I've been paralyzed for 8 years. What makes you think you can achieve what the best doctors in the world could not?" His tone dripped with condescension. Kevin didn't flinch. "I'm suggesting, Your Honor, that the truth has a way of standing on its own 2 feet, just like justice." He paused, letting the subtle implication hang in the air. "I have evidence. Evidence that proves my mother's innocence and exposes the real thief." The courtroom's laughter died down, replaced by a confused murmur. "Evidence?" someone whispered. "What could a kid possibly have?" Mark's eyes darted between Kevin and Judge Carter, a bead of sweat forming on his temple. Patricia Williams stepped forward, her voice clear and authoritative. Your Honor, if the young man claims to have new evidence, due process dictates it must be heard. Judge Carter looked annoyed, his gaze narrowing at Patricia, then at Kevin. This is highly irregular. Ms. Williams, we have a verdict. Indeed, Judge Carter retorted, a sneer on his face. And what kind of evidence would a 12-year-old janitor's son have? Perhaps a crayon drawing of the thief? Or a confession from his imaginary friend? He looked at the gallery, clearly inviting them to share in his amusement. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the room. Kevin ignored the jibe. He pulled a small, worn USB drive from his pocket, holding it up. I have proof, Your Honor. Proof of a conspiracy. Proof of corruption. And proof that you, Judge Carter, are quite capable of walking. The USB drive glinted under the courtroom lights. Judge Carter's face, which had been set in an arrogant mask, suddenly went pale. His gaze flickered to Mark, who had gone completely still, his eyes wide with a dawning horror. The tension in the courtroom became palpable. A heavy silence broken only by the distant city hum. Everyone leaned forward, suddenly desperate to know what secrets that small device held. You've gone too far. Boy, Judge Carter's voice was strained. A hint of desperation now laced through his usual arrogance. The judge gripped the arms of his wheelchair, his knuckles white. The courtroom air thickened with unspoken fear. Mark, beside him, was openly sweating, his gaze fixed on the USB drive as if it were a ticking bomb. The crowd, now fully invested, buzzed with hushed speculation. Kevin, still holding the USB drive, met Judge Carter's furious gaze without flinching. Have I, Your Honor? Or is it that the truth has finally caught up? He looked at Patricia Williams, a silent plea in his eyes for her help. Patricia stepped forward, addressing the court with calm authority. Your Honor, the court cannot ignore a claim of new evidence, especially one that implicates a potential conspiracy. I formally request that this evidence be presented. Judge Carter hesitated, trapped. The scene shifts to Kevin, weeks earlier, hunched over his mother's old, clunky laptop late at night. The dim glow of the screen illuminated his focused face. He'd discovered a pattern in the courthouse's digital records, small discrepancies in financial transfers, an anomaly in the security camera footage on the night of the alleged theft. His mother thought he was doing homework. She never knew he was teaching himself forensic data analysis from old online courses, fueled by a burning need to clear her name. He remembered the feeling of exhilaration mixed with dread when he found the first real clue, a deleted log file that, once recovered, pointed to an inside job. He wasn't just a janitor's son. He was a self-taught digital detective, meticulous and relentless. He'd spent countless hours learning coding, data recovery, and cybersecurity basics, driven by the injustice inflicted upon his mother. What exactly is on that device? Judge Carter demanded, his voice a little too loud, a little too quick. Kevin replied, Recordings, Your Honor, and data logs. They tell a very different story about who stole the money. Judge Carter's face was a mask of barely controlled rage, his previous composure shattering. This is an outrage! A baseless accusation from a child. I will not allow this circus to continue. But his bluster felt hollow. The crowd was silent, leaning forward, every eye on Kevin and the judge. The hushed whispers were gone, replaced by a collective, breathless anticipation. Patricia Williams, seeing the opening, spoke firmly. Your Honor, denying a review of this evidence would be a grave miscarriage of justice and could lead to grounds for an appeal. You must allow it. Judge Carter glared at Kevin, then at Patricia. The weight of the court's protocol and the audience's shifting gaze pressed in on him. He knew he had no choice. And in his eyes, Kevin saw not just anger, but a profound, sickening dread. Very well. Judge Carter's voice was thin, defeated, as he finally conceded. Let's see this evidence. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Mark practically vibrated with barely contained panic. The hum of the projector fan filled the sudden void of noise as a bailiff, under Patricia's direction, connected Kevin's USB drive. The large screen behind the judge's bench flickered to life, showing a simple desktop folder. Kevin walked to the stand, his small hand steady as he clicked open the first file. Kevin opened an audio file first. The speakers crackled, then filled the room with the distinct, unmistakable voice of Mark, the judge's assistant. 50,000, Judge, cleared right out. And that damn janitor won't know what hit her. Perfect scapegoat. The words, cold and casual, hung in the air. A collective gasp. Sarah Washington, still seated at the defense table, stared at the screen, tears of disbelief welling in her eyes. The crowd gasped again, then a murmur of outrage began to build. Judge Carter's face went ashen. He turned slowly, his eyes wide with a mixture of betrayal and horror, to stare at Mark. Mark, whose face had drained of all color, was now visibly trembling, mouthing an inaudible, desperate no. Kevin played another clip. This one was shorter, but even more damning. It was Judge Carter's own voice. Just make sure it's clean, Mark. No loose ends. I need that money for personal investments. The murmur transformed into an angry buzz. Hands covered mouths, eyes widened. This wasn't just about a janitor. It was about the integrity of the court itself. Patricia Williams stepped forward, her voice ringing with newfound authority. Your Honor, it appears we have not only identified the true perpetrator, but also revealed a grave abuse of power at the highest levels of this court. Her gaze swept across the stunned faces in the gallery. Kevin remembered the countless nights he'd spent setting up tiny, undetectable audio recorders in the judge's chambers, disguised as dust bunnies, using skills he'd learned from old spy thrillers and online forums. He'd taught himself how to cloak Wi-Fi signals and upload data remotely, always careful, always silent. He even bought a mini drone to do it by selling old shoes. He'd learned to identify the subtle sound of the judge's electric wheelchair, using it as a cue to start recording, hoping to catch something. He remembered the thrill of finally capturing these damning conversations, the quiet satisfaction of knowing he was building an unassailable case brick by painstaking brick. His mother's sacrifices, his own hidden brilliance. It was all culminating in this moment. Mark suddenly bolted for the door, a desperate animal caught in a trap. I didn't. He made me! He knew! He shrieked, pointing at Judge Carter as bailiffs moved to intercept him. But it was Judge Carter's reaction that truly froze the room. His hands, still gripping the arms of his wheelchair, began to tremble uncontrollably, and a single tear traced a path down his cheek, not of sorrow but of pure, unadulterated terror. Mark's desperate cries echoed as bailiffs wrestled him to the floor, but all eyes were fixed on Judge Carter, whose stony facade had completely shattered. The sounds of Mark's struggle, the snapping of handcuffs, faded into the background. Judge Carter's breathing became ragged, his chest heaving. His gaze was fixed on Kevin, a mixture of disbelief and utter defeat in his eyes. The courtroom was utterly silent, every person holding their breath, witnessing the public unraveling of a once-respected man. Kevin, standing small but resolute, held up another item. A photograph. And here, Your Honor, he said, his voice even, is the proof of your personal investments, specifically the newly installed state-of-the-art lift in your private residence, purchased just days after the $50,000 went missing from the courthouse safe. The image displayed on the screen was undeniable. A gleaming, expensive lift. Judge Carter's head dropped, his shoulders shaking. He couldn't even meet Kevin's eyes. The arrogance, the condescension, was entirely gone, replaced by a profound, agonizing shame. He was cornered, publicly exposed, his carefully constructed reputation crumbling around him. Patricia Williams stepped in, her voice cutting through the silence. The evidence is overwhelming, Your Honor. Not only is Ms. Washington innocent, but it appears we have uncovered a pattern of systemic corruption. She looked directly at the press, whose cameras were now flashing furiously. A low, angry rumble spread through the gallery. The whispers were no longer about Kevin's audacity, but about the judge's profound betrayal of public trust. People glared at Judge Carter, their faces etched with disgust. Judge Carter, Patricia continued, her voice firm, do you deny these recordings? Do you deny the timing of your lavish renovations? Judge Carter slowly raised his head, his eyes red-rimmed. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked utterly broken. Suddenly, a tremor ran through Judge Carter's body. His hands, still gripping the wheelchair arms, began to clench. Then, with a grunt of effort that silenced the entire room, he began to push. His legs, for 8 years limp and lifeless, twitched. A collective gasp. He was trying to stand. The courtroom erupted in a fresh wave of gasps as Judge Carter miraculously began to push himself upwards from his wheelchair. The squeak of the chair, the labored grunts from Judge Carter filled the suddenly sacred space. His legs, trembling violently, bore his weight. Sweat poured down his face. The press photographers froze, their cameras momentarily forgotten. Every single person in the courtroom was on their feet, not out of respect, but out of sheer, stunned disbelief. He's standing, someone whispered, their voice laced with a mixture of terror and awe. Others murmured, a miracle? But a deeper, more unsettling truth was dawning on many. Judge Carter swayed precariously, his entire body shaking. He was standing, but not with strength or triumph. He was standing because the weight of his guilt, the public exposure, the crushing shame, had literally forced him from his seat. His eyes were wide, not with joy, but with raw, unadulterated agony and fear. He looked less like a man reborn and more like a ghost haunted by his own sins. Kevin, his voice barely a whisper, yet clear in the absolute silence, spoke directly to the trembling judge. I told you, Judge Carter, I'd make you walk again. Patricia Williams watched, her expression a mix of professional satisfaction and profound human shock. She understood now. Kevin hadn't meant a physical cure, but a moral imperative. The judge had walked under the sheer, unbearable pressure of his own conscience being brought to light. Judge Carter finally collapsed back into his chair, a defeated sob escaping his lips. His reign of arrogance, his abuse of power, had been brought down not by a legal team, but by a child's unwavering belief in truth. The courtroom doors burst open and more police officers entered, quickly moving to secure Judge Carter and Mark. Sarah Washington, tears streaming down her face, rushed to Kevin, pulling him into a fierce embrace. The crowd, now buzzing with awe and admiration, turned their attention fully to Kevin, no longer the janitor's boy, but the boy who had brought a powerful judge to his knees and to his feet. As Judge Carter was led away, his face etched with unspeakable shame, he passed Kevin. Their eyes met one last time. In that brief moment, Kevin saw not just a broken man, but a flicker of genuine, terrifying understanding in the judge's gaze. He knew now who Kevin truly was and what he was capable of. The courtroom emptied in a chaotic flurry of flashing cameras and excited chatter, but Kevin felt only a profound sense of relief as his mother held him tight. Sarah Washington, officially exonerated, cried tears of joy and gratitude. "My boy," she whispered, burying her face in his hair. "You saved me!" Reporters swarmed Kevin, microphones thrust in his face. "Kevin, how did you do it? Are you a prodigy? What's next for you?" He was no longer just the janitor's son. He was a national sensation, a symbol of justice. Patricia Williams, breaking through the media scrum, put a hand on Kevin's shoulder. Her eyes, filled with respect, met his. "Kevin, what you did today, it was extraordinary. I want to help you. I want to make sure your brilliance doesn't go unnoticed." She pressed a business card into his hand. "My firm offers scholarships for gifted young people. We can help you get into the best schools, cultivate that incredible mind." News channels immediately picked up the story. Judge Carter's downfall, his miraculous but shaming stand, became a national spectacle. His picture, alongside Kevin's, dominated every screen, a stark contrast of arrogance and quiet genius. His reputation was irrevocably shattered, a cautionary tale of corruption exposed. Kevin, still holding his mother's hand, looked at Patricia. "Thank you, Ms. Williams. That means a lot." His quiet dignity in the face of sudden fame was remarkable. He hadn't done it for glory, but for justice. The story spread like wildfire, inspiring countless discussions about integrity, power, and the overlooked potential in unexpected places. Kevin's dare, "I'll make you walk again," became a poignant moral. Sometimes, the weight of truth can compel even the most entrenched injustice to rise and face its reckoning. Later that night, As the news droned on about his heroism, Kevin sat beside his mother on their worn couch. She was free. He had done it. But he couldn't shake the image of Judge Carter's face as he was led away, the lingering chill in his eyes. Justice had been served, but the deep-seated corruption he had exposed felt like just the tip of an iceberg, a larger battle waiting to be fought. He knew this was just the beginning of his journey, not the end.